Hello and welcome to another Mr. Carter Science Special. In this video we'll be looking at the differences in the structure of bacteria and viruses. In your course you'll be having to look at a large number of different diseases caused by microorganisms. A microorganism might be a bacteria, a fungi, a protocyst or a virus. Fungi and protocysts are both eukaryotic cells, and that means they're cells with a nucleus. Whereas bacteria are prokaryotic cells, which means that they do not have a nucleus. So when you look at classification, you can see that we can divide all living organisms into just two basic groups known as domains. We can have the prokaryotic domain and the eukaryotic domain. And the difference between the two is that the eukaryotes have a nucleus and the prokaryotes do not have a nucleus. So the eukaryotic domain can be further divided into four kingdoms: protocysts, fungi, animals and plants, which you should be familiar with by now. The prokaryotes, which include all bacteria and any other cells that have no nucleus, are much smaller than eukaryotes. They are between 0.2 and 2 micrometers long compared to a eukaryotic cell that might be up to 200 micrometers long. Prokaryotic bacterial cells have a cell membrane, they have cytoplasm and they have genetic material, DNA, but the genetic material is not enclosed within a nucleus. So what other features do bacterial cells have? Well, all bacterial or prokaryotic cells are single-celled organisms. They exist as one cell on its own. They do not have a nucleus. But bacterial cells do have a cell wall, a cell membrane and cytoplasm, and the function of those is exactly the same as you might find in an animal or a plant cell. Bacterial cells also contain a looped chromosome of DNA that you can see down here, this single strange large loop of DNA. But they will also have smaller circular sections of DNA shown here, called plasmids. Plasmids are very useful and scientists have been able to utilize them in a range of genetic engineering techniques. Many bacteria will also have a flagella, and you can see those here coming off of bacteria, and these are proteins that will sort of wave along and allow the bacteria cell to move towards or away from a stimuli. Some bacteria cells will also have a slime capsule, and you can see that on the diagram here in yellow, surrounding the cell wall and the cell membrane. Now, a slime capsule will prevent the cell from drying out in certain environments, and this is a very useful adaptation for a number of bacterial cells, such as the tuberculosis bacteria, so that it can remain alive in some adverse conditions. So examples of bacteria include Lactobacillus bulgaricus, which is a rod-shaped bacterium used in the production of yogurt and milk, or Pneumococcus, which is a spherical bacterium that acts as a pathogen and causes the disease pneumonia. Now, some bacteria are pathogens, but not all. Now, a pathogen is any microbe that will cause a disease. So some bacteria are very harmful to our body, but the majority of bacteria are actually very useful and beneficial to our bodies and to ourselves. So let's look at these bacteria and how they can actually be useful for us. As we've already mentioned, some bacteria can be used to make yogurt and cheese from milk. Other bacteria can be used to treat sewage. Bacteria can be used to make medicines like antibiotics or insulin if they have been genetically modified, and that would involve inserting a gene into the plasmids that would allow the bacteria to make these antibiotics or insulin. There's approximately 1 to 2 kilograms of bacteria in your body, and they do have a very large effect on your health and your well-being. In particular, your gut bacteria will have a large effect on your body, and that will be the bacteria you find in your small intestines or in your stomach. Bacteria can also act as decomposers within your body and also within the environment. And as we've already mentioned, many bacteria are beneficial, but some of them may well be pathogenic, like Pneumococcus, and cause diseases. So how does a bacteria cause disease? Well, as you can see in this little image here, this video, bacteria can cause disease by dividing rapidly by binary fission. One bacteria will very quickly divide into 2 bacteria, which will then become 4 bacteria, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128. Within 4 hours, you'll have over 4,000 bacteria very rapidly. In fact, they grow in an exponential way, so that you will end up with very large numbers in a very short space of time. And those bacteria will produce toxins or poisons that can damage your cells and make you feel ill. If you do have an infection, you're likely to get high temperatures, headaches and rashes, but these are not caused by the bacteria, they're actually caused by your body's response to the pathogen, and they are often a way of the body trying to destroy or damage or reduce the growth of the pathogen. So what about viruses? Well, viruses, interestingly enough, are not living organisms. In fact, they don't carry out all 7 life processes. Viruses don't respire, viruses do not grow, they don't need nutrients. Yes, they can move, yes, they're sensitive to their environment, but no, they don't carry out all 7 living life processes. So we don't class them as being alive. In fact, viruses are not even cells. Viruses are much smaller than bacteria, and we measure their length using nanometers instead of the micrometers that we use for bacteria. Viruses contain genetic material, either DNA or a very similar molecule called RNA, and a protein coat. And you can see that here with our bacteriophage virus. And a bacteriophage virus is a virus that would infect bacteria cells. And you can see in the center here we have some genetic material, and that will be either DNA or RNA, as we've said. And surrounding that we have a protein coat. In fact, this protein coat is particularly complex and has a very interesting structure, but that's the basics of all structures for all viruses. They only have genetic material that is either DNA or RNA and a protein coat. Some viruses though will also have a membrane envelope, and you can see that here with the influenza virus that we've got here. The membrane envelope is the membrane, the cell membrane taken from the host cell. As the viruses have burst out, they pull a section of that membrane away, and that cell membrane will wrap itself around the virus's protein coat. A virus is always parasitic. They can only reproduce inside a living cell. So viruses are always pathogenic to the cells that they invade. They will always cause disease. How do viruses cause disease? Well, the virus will inject its genetic material, either that DNA or RNA, into the host cell, and then that DNA will take over and use the cell's organelles to make millions of copies of the virus. Eventually, this destroys the cell when the cell bursts, and it will damage the tissues, surrounding tissues as well. If you do have a viral infection, perhaps a cold or influenza or COVID-19, you're likely to experience high temperatures, headaches and rashes. Now, these are not caused by the virus, but in fact they're caused by your body's response to that pathogenic virus. And we can see on the page here a couple of different structures of viruses that we've got. We've got the tobacco mosaic virus that will cause the discolouring of leaves of a tobacco plant and prevent the formation of chloroplasts, therefore preventing the plant from carrying out photosynthesis in those areas where it's infected with the virus. We also have over here the HIV virus, human immunodeficiency virus, that causes the disease AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency. And you can see that it's got around the outside of the HIV virus here, you can see it's got one of those membrane envelopes that it's removed from the host cells when the virus is burst out of that particular cell. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. Please comment below, let me know what you've learned, if there's anything you'd like to see in the future. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you'll get notifications of when the next videos are released, and thank you very much for watching.